Have you ever sent a text by mistake, and it changed everything? Emily Jacobs never thought a simple grocery list could lead to life-altering consequences. As a single mom, she spent most of her days juggling the responsibilities of raising her two twins, Oliver and Lily, while managing a tight budget. Life was hard, but she always made it work. She had to. Every penny mattered. But one evening, as she scrolled through her phone, trying to finalize her grocery list, Emily accidentally sent it to the one person she never meant to contact. Ryan Matthews. Her ex. The billionaire who was once her world, and now, just a distant memory. They hadn't spoken in years, not since their messy breakup. Ryan was living a life of luxury, and Emily was struggling to make ends meet. She hadn't even realized the mistake until a few minutes later when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, expecting a grocery store confirmation, but instead, there was a notification from Ryan. "I received your grocery list," the text read. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had sent him a shopping list by accident. Why would he even care about that? She was about to panic when the next message popped up. It was a wire transfer. $500,000. For the twins, it said. Emily blinked. She couldn't believe her eyes. Was this some kind of joke? It couldn't be real. But it was. She clicked on the notification. The money was there, sitting in her account. She stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. Ryan had sent $500,000, just like that. For Oliver and Lily, her precious children. Emily's mind raced. Why would he do this? Why would he give her this kind of money after everything that had happened? They hadn't talked in so long, and even when they were together, things had never been this simple. He hadn't even said a word. Just the money and that short message. For the twins. The twins. A strange mix of gratitude and confusion filled Emily's heart. She knew Ryan had always been generous, but this was beyond anything she could have expected. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't expected it, and now she had to figure out what to do. Should she accept it? And if so, what would this mean for her and Ryan? Could this gesture be a sign that he was trying to make up for the past, or was there something more behind it? As Emily stared at her phone, the weight of the situation began to settle in. Her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But one thing was for sure, this wasn't just about money. It was about the choices they would both have to make, starting with how Emily would respond to this unexpected offer. Emily sat there in her living room, staring at the phone screen, unable to process what had just happened. The transfer had gone through. $500,000. Her mind raced, her heart pounding. What was she supposed to do with this kind of money? And why would Ryan send it to her, after everything? The years of silence between them, the bitterness that had lingered after their breakup, it all seemed so distant now. Yet, here she was, staring at the message from him as if it was a dream she couldn't wake up from. The twins were playing in the background, their laughter a stark contrast to the turmoil she was feeling inside. Emily had always done everything on her own. She had raised Oliver and Lily without Ryan's help. She was proud of how far she had come, but deep down, she knew that the struggles were real. The bills, the late nights trying to balance work and motherhood, and the constant worry about the future. Her life had never been easy, but she had made it work. But now, with the money sitting in her bank account, she wasn't sure what to feel. Should she take it? Should she reach out to Ryan and ask him why he was doing this? Her fingers hovered over the phone screen as she considered her options. She had so many questions, but no answers. She hadn't spoken to Ryan in years, not since the divorce. Their relationship had ended in a way that neither of them could have predicted, with both of them carrying scars that were never fully healed. She could still remember the way Ryan had looked at her the day they parted ways, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and frustration. It had been a painful decision for both of them, but they had walked away from each other. And now, this unexpected gift. She looked over at the twins, their faces full of innocence, unaware of the whirlwind that had just begun. Oliver and Lily deserved the best, and Emily had always tried her hardest to give them that. But sometimes, it wasn't enough. There had been times when she had to skip meals so that they could eat, or when she had to stretch the little money she had just to make sure they had clothes that fit. She never let them see how hard it was. They were too young to understand, and she didn't want them to carry the burden of her struggles. But now, with $500,000 sitting in her account, it was as if she had been given a chance to breathe. A chance to give her kids everything she had ever wanted to. But was it right to take it? She didn't want to rely on Ryan, not after everything they had been through. She had spent so many years proving that she could do it on her own, that she didn't need anyone's help. But this money, it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her children, their future. And maybe, just maybe, it was a sign that Ryan was trying to make things right. But could she accept it without feeling like she was taking something from him? Could she even look at him the same way again after everything that had happened between them? Emily's thoughts were interrupted by a buzz from her phone. It was a message from Ryan. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. "I didn't want to just send money without an explanation," the message began. "I've been thinking about you and the twins a lot lately. I know I wasn't there when you needed me, and I'm sorry for that. But I want to help. I want to be there for them, for you. I can't change the past, but I can try to make a difference now. I hope this doesn't make things more complicated, but I just couldn't sit by and do nothing." Emily's heart sank as she read the words. Ryan was apologizing. After all this time, he was apologizing. She hadn't expected this. It was clear that he wasn't just sending money to make up for his past mistakes, he was offering something more. He was offering to be part of their lives again. Emily sat back in her chair, her eyes brimming with tears. She had never expected this kind of gesture from Ryan. After everything that had happened, after all the pain they had both endured, here he was, trying to make amends. It was overwhelming. She wanted to say something, but her emotions were tangled up in knots. She didn't know how to respond. She didn't know if she should even respond at all. The idea of letting him back into her life, back into the lives of Oliver and Lily, was terrifying. But the thought of turning down his offer felt even worse. She had always wanted the best for her children, and this could be their chance at something better. But was it worth the risk? Would it be worth reopening old wounds just to allow Ryan back in? Emily took a deep breath and wiped away the tears that had started to fall. This wasn't a decision she could make lightly. She had to think about what was best for her family, and she had to figure out if she was ready to let go of the past and move forward with Ryan in some capacity. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: everything was about to change. Emily sat in silence, her fingers resting on the edge of her phone. The message from Ryan still sat there, blinking at her in the quiet of her living room. She had read it over and over, each time trying to make sense of it. "I want to be there for them, for you." The words echoed in her mind. Ryan had never been the type to apologize easily, let alone offer help, especially after everything that had gone wrong between them. She had spent so many years convincing herself that she was better off without him, that she didn't need him or his money. But now, with that message staring back at her, she wasn't so sure. The twins were playing in the other room, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mind. Emily had always tried to shield them from the harsh realities of life. She didn't want them to know how much she struggled, how many nights she lay awake worrying about their future. She wanted them to believe that everything was fine, that their mother could handle anything. But now, with Ryan's offer hanging over her, Emily felt like she was on the verge of a decision that could change everything. Was it worth it? Was it worth risking her independence, her pride, to accept help from the man who had once broken her heart? She looked at the twins again, their laughter filling the room, and something in her shifted. They deserved better than this. They deserved a future where they didn't have to worry about money, where they didn't have to watch their mother struggle to make ends meet. Ryan had always been generous, even when they were together. But this was something different. This was him trying to make amends, trying to show that he cared. Emily hadn't asked for the money, hadn't even considered that Ryan might help her. She had always believed that asking for help was a sign of weakness, that she should be able to do it on her own. But now, she wasn't so sure. If Ryan truly wanted to be there for her and the kids, maybe this was his way of showing it. Maybe this was his way of proving that he had changed. Emily picked up her phone and looked at the transfer one more time. $500,000. The amount seemed unreal, almost too good to be true. But there it was, in black and white. The money was in her account. She could feel the weight of it, the responsibility that came with it. If she accepted it, things would never be the same. She could take the money, give her kids the life they deserved, and finally stop worrying about bills and expenses. But accepting it also meant letting Ryan back into her life, even if only in a small way. And that thought brought a wave of uncertainty. What would it mean for her relationship with Ryan? Could she trust him again after everything that had happened? Emily knew that she couldn't make this decision alone. She needed time to think, to process everything. But one thing was certain, her life was no longer just about her. It was about Oliver and Lily, and their future. She couldn't let pride stand in the way of their happiness. Emily took a deep breath and sent a reply to Ryan. "Thank you," she typed slowly. "But I need time to think about this. I will get back to you." She hesitated before hitting send. This was a crossroads, a moment that could define the rest of her life. Would she move forward with Ryan's offer? Or would she continue on her own, as she always had? The answer wasn't clear yet, but Emily knew that the journey ahead would be one of self-discovery. And no matter what happened, she would do whatever it took to give her children the best life possible. Emily spent the next few days in a fog, her mind constantly circling back to Ryan's message and the $500,000 in her bank account. She tried to focus on her kids, on the day-to-day responsibilities of life, but the weight of the decision she had to make lingered in the background like a heavy cloud. She had never been one to rely on anyone, especially not Ryan. She had spent so long building her life without him, proving that she could do it on her own. But now, the offer he had extended seemed to make her question everything she had ever believed about herself. Was it really okay to accept help from him? Could she trust him again after everything that had happened between them? And what did this even mean for their relationship, or lack of one? Ryan's message had been clear, he wanted to help, wanted to be there for her and the twins. But Emily couldn't ignore the fact that their past was complicated. She remembered the late nights of arguing, the resentment that had built up between them, the feeling of being abandoned when she needed him most. And yet, here he was, offering to step back into her life, in a way that felt like an apology, an attempt to make up for the past. But could one gesture, no matter how generous, truly erase years of hurt and betrayal? It wasn't just about the money. It was about the trust that had been broken, the years spent apart, and the lives they had built separately. She didn't know if she was ready to open that door again. It was tempting, of course. $500,000 could change so many things for her family. It could pay off bills, cover expenses, provide the kind of life she had always dreamed of for Oliver and Lily. She could give them opportunities she had never been able to before, better schools, travel, a house where they didn't have to worry about fitting everything into the cramped space they were renting. But at what cost? Was it worth it to accept the money and risk bringing Ryan back into her life? Was she ready to forgive him for the pain he had caused, for the way he had left when she needed him the most? Emily didn't have all the answers. She didn't know if she could truly forgive him, if she could ever let go of the past. But she knew one thing for sure, she couldn't make this decision on her own. She needed to talk to someone, to get perspective. And as much as she hated to admit it, Ryan was still a part of her life, a part of her children's lives. Maybe she didn't need to forgive him all at once. Maybe the first step was just being open to the possibility of moving forward. Emily decided to call her best friend, Sarah. Sarah had been there for her through everything, from the highs to the lows, and she had never judged her for her choices. Emily needed someone who would listen, someone who would help her make sense of the overwhelming emotion she was feeling. When Sarah answered the phone, Emily didn't waste any time. "Sarah, I need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. I don't know what to do. Ryan, he sent me money. $500,000. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Sarah spoke. Wow. That's a lot of money. What did he say? Emily took a deep breath before explaining everything, how Ryan had sent the money, how he had apologized for his past mistakes, and how she was now torn between accepting the help or refusing it. Sarah listened carefully, without interrupting, and when Emily finished, there was another long pause. Finally, Sarah spoke. I think you have to do what feels right for you, Emily. You know better than anyone what's best for you and the twins. But I will say this, sometimes people change. People make mistakes, and they try to make up for them in their own way. I don't know if you can ever truly forgive him, but maybe this is his way of showing that he wants to be a part of your lives again. Maybe it's worth considering. Emily sat quietly for a moment, letting Sarah's words sink in. She had always valued Sarah's opinion, trusted her judgment, and for the first time in days, Emily felt a sense of clarity. She didn't have to make this decision in a hurry. She could take her time. She didn't have to forgive Ryan right away, but maybe she could take the first step toward something new. Maybe accepting the money wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about accepting that things could be different now. She knew that she didn't have all the answers, but she also knew that the decision wasn't just about her. It was about Oliver and Lily, and their future. Emily had spent so long carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, trying to do it all alone. Maybe it was time to let go of some of that weight and see where life could take her, without the fear, without the doubt. She took a deep breath and made a decision. She would talk to Ryan, hear him out, and take it from there. Whatever happened, she knew that she was doing what was best for her children. And that was all that really mattered. Emily sat at her kitchen table, her phone in her hand, as the weight of the decision pressed heavily on her chest. After days of thinking and talking it through with Sarah, she had finally decided to reach out to Ryan. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she couldn't keep avoiding the reality of the situation. The twins were in their room, playing, completely unaware of the inner turmoil their mother was facing. Emily took a deep breath and dialed Ryan's number. The phone rang a few times before he picked up. Hey, Emily, Ryan's voice was calm, almost too calm. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Emily hesitated for a moment, her heart racing. I've been thinking, she said, her voice shaky but steady. About the money. About everything, really. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Ryan responded. I understand if you're confused or if you don't want to take it. I just wanted to do something for you and the kids. I know I wasn't there when I should have been, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm hoping this is a step toward making things right, even if just a little. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, taking in his words. She had expected some form of apology, but hearing it so directly from him made her feel both vulnerable and oddly reassured. It's not just about the money, Ryan, she said softly. I know you're trying to help, and I appreciate that, but I don't know if I can just forget everything that's happened. It's not that simple. Ryan's tone softened, and Emily could tell he was choosing his words carefully. I know it's not simple. I don't expect you to just forgive me or forget. I've hurt you, and I can't undo that. But I want you to know that I'm here now, in whatever way you need. Whether it's just the money or something more, I'm willing to do what it takes to make a difference in your life and the kids' lives. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. It had been so long since she had heard him speak with such sincerity. She had spent years convincing herself that she didn't need him, that she was better off without him. But here he was, reaching out, offering a gesture of goodwill that she hadn't expected. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm still processing everything. I never thought we'd be having this conversation. Ryan's voice was understanding, warm even. I get it. You don't have to decide anything right now. I'm not asking for anything from you, except for a chance to make things right. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready to talk more, about whatever you need. Emily's fingers tightened around the phone, her mind swirling with emotions. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, but also fear. Fear of letting Ryan back into her life, fear of what it would mean for her and the twins. She had always prided herself on being independent, on not needing anyone. But now, the possibility of something different, something better for her children, seemed so close, yet so far. "I'll think about it," she finally said, her voice steady. "I'm not making any promises, but I'll think about it." Ryan let out a small sigh of relief. "That's all I can ask for. I'll respect whatever decision you make, Emily." The conversation ended with a quiet exchange of goodbyes, and Emily sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in her hand. She didn't know what the future held, or if she would ever be able to fully forgive Ryan for the pain he had caused. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go of the past and allow herself to move forward. She stood up from the table, her heart still heavy but her mind clearer than it had been in days. Whatever she decided, Emily knew that the most important thing was her children's future. And no matter what, she would always fight for that. She walked into the living room, where Oliver and Lily were sitting on the floor, playing with their toys, their faces full of joy. She watched them for a moment, feeling a wave of love wash over her. They were her world, and no matter what happened with Ryan, she would always do what was best for them. Emily knew the road ahead would be filled with difficult choices, but she was ready to face them. Without Ryan, she would do whatever it took to build a better future for her kids. And that, she decided, was enough. Emily woke up early the next morning, the bright sunlight streaming through the window as she rubbed her eyes and stretched. The house was quiet, just the soft sounds of the twins playing in the next room. She had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with thoughts of Ryan and the decision she had yet to make. The phone call with him had left her conflicted, but it had also given her something she hadn't had in a long time, a sense of clarity. She had told him she would think about it, and now, it was time to do just that. She had spent so much of her life believing she didn't need anyone, that she could do it all on her own. But the reality was different now. The money Ryan had sent wasn't just a lifeline, it was a sign that things could change, that there was a possibility for a better future for Oliver and Lily. She wanted the best for them, more than anything, and maybe this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. She took a deep breath and walked into the living room where Oliver and Lily were sitting on the floor, engrossed in their toys. Their laughter filled the air, a sound that always brought a smile to her face. She watched them for a moment, her heart full of love. They deserved so much more than the struggles she had faced. She had always told herself that she would provide for them no matter what, that she would make sure they never had to worry. But the reality was, things weren't always that simple. The bills piled up, the late nights working, the constant stress, it all weighed on her. Ryan's offer, no matter how complicated, seemed like a chance to finally break free from that weight. Emily walked over to the twins, sitting down beside them. "Hey, you two," she said softly, reaching out to gently hug them both. "How's my favorite pair of troublemakers doing this morning?" Oliver looked up and smiled, his eyes sparkling. "We're playing, Mommy," he exclaimed. Lily, always the more reserved one, nodded in agreement. "Playing with blocks," she said in her quiet voice. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She wanted to give them everything they deserved. And maybe, just maybe, Ryan's gesture was the first step in that direction. After spending the morning with the twins, Emily decided it was time to call Ryan again. She had thought about it long enough, and she knew that avoiding the decision wasn't going to help anyone. She needed to face it head on, for her sake and for the kids. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number. This time, when Ryan answered, there was no hesitation in her voice. "Ryan," she said, her tone steady, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About the money, about everything. And I've decided that I'm willing to talk more about it." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and then Ryan spoke. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured, Emily. I know this is a big decision." Emily nodded even though he couldn't see her. "I'm sure. I don't want to make any rash decisions, but I also can't ignore the fact that this could make things easier for us. For the kids. Ryan's voice softened. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, in any way you need. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to do better. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, her thoughts swirling. She had spent so many years holding on to her anger and resentment, but now, she was starting to see a different side of Ryan. A side that wanted to make things right. She wasn't sure if she could forgive him completely, but she was beginning to realize that forgiveness didn't always mean forgetting. It meant accepting the possibility that people could change, that people could grow. I don't know what the future holds, Emily said, her voice softer now. But I'm willing to take a chance. For the kids. For all of us. Ryan let out a breath, and Emily could hear the relief in his voice. Thank you, he said, his tone full of sincerity. I won't let you down. Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders, though she knew that the road ahead would still be difficult. There were no guarantees, no promises that everything would magically fall into place. But she had made the decision, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was taking control of her own life. She wasn't doing it alone anymore. And that, in itself, was a big step forward. As she hung up the phone, she walked back into the living room, where Oliver and Lily were still playing. She watched them for a moment, her heart full of love and hope. The future was uncertain, but Emily knew one thing for sure: whatever came next, she would face it with strength and determination. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And that made all the difference. Emily spent the next few days adjusting to the new dynamic that had started to form between her and Ryan. She wasn't sure what would come from this renewed connection, but something inside her had shifted. She had opened herself up to the possibility of forgiveness, not just for Ryan but for herself. It had been years since she had felt the weight of the past slowly lifting, and though the scars were still there, she was starting to see that healing didn't always require forgetting. The twins were doing well, as always, their laughter and innocence grounding her. Life with them had always been simple in the most beautiful way, and Emily realized just how much she had sacrificed to keep that simplicity intact. She spent her days with them, balancing work and their needs, but her nights were spent reflecting. She had talked to Ryan a few more times since their last conversation, discussing plans for the future, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper. As much as she wanted to move forward, to take Ryan's help and allow him to be a part of their lives, she knew it wasn't going to be easy. The past had left its mark on both of them. Emily had built a life without him, and she had learned to protect herself in ways that made her wary of opening up again. Yet, there was a part of her that couldn't deny the hope that maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe Ryan had changed. Maybe she had, too. The phone buzzed one afternoon while Emily was making lunch. It was a message from Ryan. I was thinking, the text began, I'd love to take you and the kids out this weekend. A fresh start. Let me know what you think. Emily stared at the message for a few moments, considering it. A part of her wanted to say no, to keep things simple and maintain the boundaries she had worked so hard to build. But another part of her, a part she hadn't expected to resurface, felt a small spark of curiosity. Could this be a chance to finally heal, to create a new version of their family, even if it was different from what they once imagined? She thought about it long and hard. The idea of going out with Ryan, of letting him spend time with Oliver and Lily, made her nervous. But it also felt like a step forward, a small one, in the right direction. She picked up the phone and typed a response. Okay, she wrote. Let's do it. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning. Ryan arranged everything, from a picnic in a local park to a small outing at a nearby museum for the kids. Emily was nervous but also excited. It felt like the beginning of something new, but it also brought back memories of the life they had once shared. Saturday arrived, and Emily found herself standing in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse. She hadn't dressed up for anything like this in a long time. She wanted to make sure everything was perfect, not just for Ryan but for herself, too. She had always been the one to handle everything, to take care of the details, but this felt different. This felt like something she had been waiting for, even if she didn't know it at the time. When the doorbell rang, her heart skipped a beat. She opened the door to find Ryan standing there, smiling with a casual, relaxed demeanor. He looked different, more at ease than the man she remembered. "Hey," he said, his voice warm. "You look great." Emily smiled, a bit shy. "Thanks." "Ready for this?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though her nerves were obvious. Ryan nodded. "I am. Let's make today about the kids." No pressure. They got in the car, and the drive to the park felt oddly comfortable. There was a sense of familiarity between them, a quiet understanding that hadn't existed before. When they arrived at the park, Oliver and Lily immediately ran off to play, their laughter filling the air. Ryan and Emily sat on a nearby bench, watching them. "They're growing up so fast," Emily said softly, her gaze fixed on her children. Ryan nodded. "They're amazing. And you're doing an incredible job with them, Emily." His words caught her off guard. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge how hard she worked, how much she had sacrificed. It was a simple compliment, but it meant more than she realized. As the day went on, Emily found herself relaxing. There were moments of laughter, moments of connection, and moments where she allowed herself to let go of the past, even if just for a little while. She didn't know what the future held for her and Ryan, but she was beginning to see that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to move forward together. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And that, Emily realized, was all she could ask for. The weeks that followed that Saturday felt like a slow unraveling of a tightly wound knot in Emily's chest. She had always been a woman of control, handling everything herself, and now, she was letting someone back in. Ryan's presence in their lives, while still tentative, was no longer a distant thought, it was becoming a reality. It started with small gestures, a trip to the park, a weekend outing, phone calls to check in. For the first time in years, Emily was allowing herself to be vulnerable, opening the door to something that could either build or break what she had worked so hard to create. Ryan was making it easy, in his own way. He didn't rush things. He didn't push for more than what she was ready to give. Every interaction felt like a gentle step forward, as though they were rebuilding a bridge that had been left in ruins. Emily didn't know if she was ready to forgive everything that had happened in the past, but with each day, she found herself softening. She began to see Ryan not just as the man who had walked away from their family, but as a person who was genuinely trying to make things right, however imperfectly. The twins were adjusting too. They had quickly warmed to Ryan, their initial hesitations fading as they spent more time with him. Oliver had taken to calling him Uncle Ryan, something that both surprised and touched Emily. Lily, in her quiet way, had begun asking about him more often, curious about the man who had suddenly reappeared in their lives. Emily knew that this was a lot for them to take in, but she was glad they were open to it. She had spent so many years trying to protect them from the complexities of adulthood, from the hurt and disappointment that had shaped her own view of love and trust. But now, with Ryan in the picture again, Emily realized that perhaps there was room for growth, for healing, not just for her, but for the kids too. As the weeks passed, Emily and Ryan started talking more about the future, about what it could look like for all of them. Ryan was eager to contribute, to be a part of the kids' lives, but Emily was still cautious. She had built a life without him, and the thought of relying on him again, even in small ways, felt foreign. Still, she couldn't ignore the fact that things were different now. Ryan was different now. He wasn't the same person who had left her struggling to raise their children alone. He had changed. And as hard as it was for her to admit, she had too. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Emily sat on the couch with Ryan, the quiet hum of the television in the background. They were both sipping tea, the conversation casual but comfortable. There was no tension, no undercurrent of unspoken words. It was the first time in a long while that Emily had felt at peace with him. "I never thought we'd be here," she said quietly, breaking the silence. Ryan looked at her, his expression soft. "I didn't either," he admitted. But I'm glad we are. Emily nodded, her gaze drifting to the window. The night sky was clear, the stars visible in the quiet darkness. I'm still figuring things out, she continued. I'm still scared. I don't know if I can ever completely forgive you, but I'm trying. I want to try, for the kids. Ryan reached out, his hand resting gently on hers. I don't need you to forgive me all at once, he said, his voice steady. I just need you to know that I'm here. For you. For them. Whenever you're ready. Emily looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in a long while. There was sincerity in his eyes, a depth she hadn't seen before. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like maybe it was worth taking a chance. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to build something new from the ashes of their past. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing worth having ever was. The next morning, Emily woke up to the sound of the twins laughing in the living room. As she walked into the room, she found them playing with Ryan, their faces lit up with excitement. She watched them for a moment, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. This was the life she had always wanted for them. A life filled with love, laughter, and the promise of something better. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And that made all the difference. As the weeks passed, Emily's life began to settle into a rhythm that was both new and familiar. She had accepted that her relationship with Ryan was evolving, but it was still a slow process, one step at a time. She spent her days working, taking care of the twins, and managing her life, while the evenings were often spent with Ryan, slowly building a new understanding of each other. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations. It was just small, quiet moments, shared dinners, walks in the park with the kids, and phone calls when they couldn't be together. Ryan was proving, little by little, that he was serious about being a part of their lives. Emily noticed how he made time for the twins, how he showed genuine interest in their schoolwork, their hobbies, and their lives. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of doubt, on her part, about whether this new version of their relationship could work. But Ryan had earned her trust in ways that words couldn't explain. It wasn't the same as it had been when they were younger, full of promises and hopes for the future. This time, it was different. They had both changed, and they both had scars to show for it. Emily had long stopped thinking of Ryan as the man who had left her to raise their children on her own. He had apologized, yes, but more importantly, he had shown up. And that, Emily realized, was what mattered most. The turning point came on a Sunday afternoon when they all went to a local beach. Emily had been hesitant at first, unsure of how it would go. But seeing the kids run into the waves with Ryan, laughing and splashing, something inside her shifted. She realized that this was what she had always wanted, a family. It wasn't the picture-perfect family she had once imagined, but it was theirs, and that made it beautiful in its own way. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow across the water, Emily sat with Ryan on the sand, the twins playing nearby. They were silent for a moment, the sound of the waves and the distant laughter of their children filling the air. "This feels right," Ryan said quietly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Emily nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and hope. "It does," she agreed. She turned to look at him, meeting his eyes for the first time in a long while. "I don't know what the future holds, Ryan. But I'm willing to try. For the kids. For us." Ryan smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "That's all I can ask for, Emily. I won't let you down." As they sat there together, watching the sunset and listening to the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, Emily realized that life was never going to be perfect. It was messy, complicated, and often difficult. But it was also beautiful, full of moments that made it all worth it. And for the first time in years, she felt like she was finally on the right path. With Ryan by her side, and the twins growing up in a home filled with love, Emily knew that they had a chance to create something new, something better than what had come before. It wasn't easy, and it wouldn't always be smooth sailing, but they were doing it together. And that was enough. With the sun dipping below the horizon, Emily took Ryan's hand, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. They didn't have all the answers, but they were ready to face whatever came next. Together.